Karen forged documents to steal my private road, then locked me out of my own property. But she underestimated one thing. I don't back down. So I bought every inch of land around the HOA and started charging them tolls to reach their own homes. Now they're trapped and furious. I never bought the land for the road. It just came with the rest of the property, kind of one long, cracked, two-lane stretch of aging asphalt that snaked through a cluster of homes belonging to a development called Harmony Hills. My lot sat at the far end, technically outside their HOA, perched on an incline like I was lording over their neatly trimmed lawns and matching mailboxes. I liked it that way. The privacy, the silence, the freedom. No architectural committees telling me what color my shutters could be or how often I had to mow my grass. The road was a leftover relic from an old farmstead forgotten by everyone except the county, and me, once I bought it. According to my deed, the access route cutting through to Harmony Hills was fully my private property, and for years I didn't mind people using it. It made their lives easier, and it didn't cost me a thing but the occasional pothole repair. That was until she moved in. I remember the first time I saw Karen Malloy. She was the kind of woman who wore power like perfume. Tall, blonde, somewhere in her 50s, but still dressed like she had just stepped out of a high-end corporate boardroom. Aviators, Lululemon, and a clipboard. Always a clipboard. The woman treated her position as president of the HOA like she was running a federal agency. Within 2 weeks of arriving, she had petitioned to repaint all the community benches in approved colonial green, fined a guy 2 doors down for using a non-standard trash bin, and scheduled mandatory community excellence walkthroughs twice a month. She hadn't spoken to me until one sunny Tuesday afternoon when I was chopping wood behind my garage. She pulled up in a pearl-white Mercedes SUV, stepped out, and marched over like she owned the place. "You must be Mr. Brady," she said with a tight smile. Her voice had that icy sweetness, like a glass of lemonade with a half bottle of vinegar in it. "That's me," I said, not bothering to put down the axe. "And you must be Karen Malloy, president of the Harmony Hills HOA," she said as if I was supposed to salute. I nodded slowly, sweat trickling down my temple. "Well, Karen Malloy, president of the HOA, what can I do for you?" Her smile faltered for just a moment. "It's about the road. It's been a bit neglected. We've received complaints about debris, fading lines, uneven grading. It reflects poorly on the neighborhood." I blinked. "You mean the road on my property?" She paused. "It runs through Harmony Hills. It's part of the visual ecosystem of our community." I had to laugh. "Visual ecosystem? That road's been there longer than most of your homes. It's private. I own it." "Well, the HOA board and I think it would be best if it were officially incorporated under HOA maintenance and oversight," she said. "It just makes sense. Uniformity, access control, liability protections." I leaned on the axe handle. "Karen, I appreciate your concern for uniformity, but I'm not interested in transferring my land to the HOA. I like things just the way they are." Something flickered behind her eyes, not rage exactly. Something colder. Calculation. "We'd be happy to take on the legal paperwork and maintenance costs," she said carefully. "You wouldn't even have to attend the meetings." "I'm good," I said. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got logs to split." She didn't move for a second. Then she smiled. Not friendly, but the kind of smile someone gives before sending a cease and desist letter. "You might want to reconsider, Mr. Brady. Being difficult about this could create unnecessary friction with your neighbors." I shrugged. "I'm already uphill from all of you. Friction's inevitable." She didn't laugh. She just got back into her SUV and drove off. slow enough to make it clear this wasn't over. Over the next few days, I started getting letters, first from the HOA, then from concerned residents. Some were polite requests to reconsider the road issue for the sake of neighborhood unity. Others were a bit more pointed. One anonymous note accused me of harboring hostile intent toward the community. Another had the balls to suggest my home lowered property values. I filed them away, unread after the first few lines. I wasn't part of the HOA. I had no obligation to them. As far as I was concerned, they could print as many bylaws as they wanted. None of them applied to me. That was probably what pissed them off the most. The first real escalation came one morning when I noticed a couple of orange cones blocking the start of the road, on my land. A laminated sign read, "Maintenance in Progress, Harmony Hills HOA." I moved the cones myself, set them on her damn lawn, and emailed the County Road Commission just to confirm they hadn't been authorized to do jack on my land. Of course they hadn't. Then came the flyers, stapled to telephone poles tucked into mailboxes. "Let's keep Harmony Hills beautiful. Sign the petition to protect our streets." My name wasn't mentioned directly, but the implication was clear. The road was under threat from a non-participant resident. I was officially the neighborhood villain. What they didn't understand, not yet anyway, was that I didn't give a damn about being liked. But I do care about being pushed, and something told me Karen wasn't done pushing. I first noticed something off a few weeks later when I received a letter from the county assessor's office. It was one of those official-looking envelopes that make your stomach tighten before you even open it. Inside was a notice informing me that modifications had been made to the public access record associated with Parcel 47B, which, according to them, referred to my driveway, or more precisely, the entire stretch of private road leading from the main road to my house. At first, I thought it was some bureaucratic screw-up. Maybe they'd mixed up parcels again. It wasn't the first time the county GIS system had hiccuped. But then I saw it. A new notation marked in bold, "Shared Community Access Easement, maintained by Harmony Hills HOA." I froze. My hands actually trembled a little. The easement didn't exist before. I knew it. My lawyer knew it. Hell, my real estate agent had made a point of bragging about it when I bought the place. Full private access, no HOA oversight. That line had practically sold me. Now on paper, my private road suddenly belonged, at least in usage rights, to the HOA. I called the county office, demanded to know who filed the paperwork. The clerk, polite but robotic, said the change had been processed upon request from a certified representative of the property owner. "Who?" I asked, though I already felt the answer creeping up my spine. "Karen Malloy," she said. The air in my kitchen went still. I hung up without saying another word. The next day, I was at the county recorder's office, holding my deed in one hand and my temper in the other. My lawyer, Tom Hensley, a calm, unflappable man who could probably argue with God himself over fine print, met me there. He examined the new records and frowned. "This signature doesn't match yours. Not even close," he said. I looked down. The forged version of my signature looked like it had been traced by someone wearing oven mitts. Sloppy, almost arrogant in how little effort it took to fake. "She really forged my name?" I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Looks like it," Tom replied. "And whoever notarized this was either blind or bribed." He filed an official complaint that same afternoon requesting a full investigation. The county agreed to freeze the record change while they verified ownership. But that was only the beginning. 2 days later, I came home to find a brand new metal barrier installed at the start of the road. A bright silver gate with a keypad entry and a shiny new sign bolted to it. Harmony Hills residents only. Private community access. I parked my truck right in front of it, jaw hanging loose. The irony almost made me laugh. Almost. Then I tried the keypad just to see. No access. My own road wouldn't let me through. While I was standing there trying to process the absurdity of it all, Karen's SUV rolled up on the other side. The tinted window slid down like a villain reveal in a bad movie. "Oh, Nick," she said, smiling too wide. "I see you've noticed the improvements. We finally have proper security for our residents. Isn't it wonderful?" "You put a gate on my land," I said slowly. "On our community's access road," she corrected. "It's official now. The HOA board approved the expense." "Based on forged paperwork," I said. Her smile flickered. "Such ugly words, Nick. Maybe you should check with the county before throwing around accusations." "I did," I snapped. "They're investigating." "Well," she said, her tone softening into something almost patronizing, "you really shouldn't fight progress. Everyone in Harmony Hills appreciates what I'm doing to keep the neighborhood safe. You're the only one making it difficult." I wanted to tell her exactly what I thought about her progress, but before I could speak, the gate swung open for her car and she drove through, waving like a queen in a parade. The gate slid shut behind her with a smug, metallic click. That night, I had to leave my truck parked at the bottom of the hill and hike through the woods to reach my house. The dirt path was narrow, uneven, and crawling with roots, the kind of trail raccoons used as a shortcut. I slipped twice, ripped my jeans, and twisted my ankle. By the time I made it to my porch, I was limping and cursing her name into the wind. The next morning, I woke up to an email from the HOA. "Notice of non-compliance," it said. "Unauthorized use of restricted community access road. Violation subject to fine." They had the nerve to fine me for using my own road. Tom assured me to stay calm, that the investigation would expose everything soon enough. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't just manipulating paperwork. She was testing how far she could go before I broke. And I had a sinking feeling she was only getting started. You'd think after someone forges your signature and installs a damn gate on your land, they'd hit pause. Maybe take a breath, reevaluate their life choices. Not Karen. For her, it was just warm-up stretches before the main event. By the end of the week, I had security footage installed. 4 motion-triggered cameras along the road, one facing the new gate and one pointed squarely at her front yard. Tom had advised me to document everything, and I wasn't taking any chances. If they were going to war over my land, I was going to have every step, every face, every bolt and barrier recorded in high definition. While the county inched through their investigation like a drunk turtle on a treadmill, Karen ramped things up. Flyers began showing up on every doorstep in Harmony Hills, screaming in bold red letters, "Community access under threat. One man's vendetta against us all." It read like a tabloid article. I was accused of intimidation, refusing to respect democratic infrastructure, and even exposing families to danger by limiting emergency access. Hell, I half expected it to say I kicked puppies for fun. The neighborhood Facebook group, which I wasn't part of, obviously, turned into a digital mob. Screenshots made their way to me through a neighbor who hadn't totally lost his mind. They were calling me Private Road Psycho, Hilltop Hermit, and my personal favorite, Dictator Brady. One woman suggested I was building a compound and stockpiling weapons. Another insisted I was preparing to sue anyone who used the road without paying a toll. It wasn't just Karen's doing anymore. She'd weaponized paranoia. One morning, I stepped outside to find a giant white X spray-painted on the road right at the bend in front of my property. Beside it, in sloppy red lettering, "Stop this now." It wasn't graffiti. It was a message, a warning, a threat. I filed a police report. The officer, local guy named Ray who'd fixed my mailbox once, looked uncomfortable. He scratched the back of his neck as he examined the paint. "You think this is HOA related?" he asked. I raised an eyebrow. "I'm sorry, do you know any other groups with a grudge against asphalt?" Ray let out a sigh. "Look, I believe you. But without camera footage of who did it, there's not much we can charge." "I'm working on that," I said, and pointed at the camera tucked under the eave of my garage. That footage never caught the culprit, but it did catch something else. 3 days later, I reviewed the motion alerts and saw footage of a man in a yellow vest and hard hat, walking along the edge of the road with a clipboard. Then another, and another. By the end of the day, 6 different individuals had come and gone. I drove down and found small white flags staked along the property line, utility markers. Karen was planning something. Tom and I got on it fast. He called the county. Turns out a permit request had been submitted for community beautification improvements, including new pavement, curbs, drainage, and, of course, widened sidewalks. On my land. "What's the permit status?" I asked, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles cracked. "They put it on hold. I submitted a formal challenge," Tom replied. "But Nick, we need to go on the offensive. Waiting for the county to fix this is a waste of time." That was when we decided to prepare our lawsuit. We started building a legal arsenal. I printed every letter, every flyer, every social media post with my name or image. Tom filed an injunction to stop all construction or modification activity on the road until ownership was resolved. We added a claim of property fraud and sought to invalidate the easement based on falsified documents. At the same time, I made my own little additions to the road, large signs reading, "Private road, no through access, trespassers will be prosecuted." I installed a fresh chain across the side entrance and put in more cameras, real and fake. Let them wonder which was which. That didn't sit well with Karen. 2 nights later, I woke to flashing lights and the unmistakable rhythm of angry knocks on the front door. I opened it in sweatpants and a flannel shirt, only to be met by 2 county deputies, and behind them Karen, arms folded like a parent catching her kid smoking. "We received a complaint about a possible obstruction to emergency vehicle access," the deputy said. "Ms. Malloy states you've blocked the roadway in a way that violates safety regulations." I rubbed my face. "You mean my road?" The second deputy pulled out a printout, a copy of the forged map, with the HOA's fake easement highlighted. "I have the original deed," I said, walking to my office, grabbing the folder and slapping it down on the entryway table. "Let me save you an hour of paperwork." They reviewed it on the porch under flashlight. After 15 minutes, they looked at each other and turned to Karen. "Ma'am, until the county finalizes its investigation, we can't enforce any HOA easement claims," the older deputy said. Karen's face tensed. "Oh, so you're going to let him jeopardize lives with his paranoid little traps and cameras?" I stepped forward, voice calm but sharp. "Funny. The only people jeopardizing anything are the ones breaking and entering onto land they don't own." Karen tried to argue further, but the deputies shut her down. They left with a warning to both of us to de-escalate. But I wasn't planning to de-escalate. That night I made a decision. If they wanted a fight over land, they were going to get one. I wasn't just going to defend what was mine. I was going to expand. The first property I bought was barely the size of a tennis court, a vacant scrap of land just past the bend near the old fire hydrant. Technically zoned residential, but undeveloped for years. I picked it up through a tax lien auction for less than the price of a used pickup. No one paid attention. Why would they? A weird triangle of overgrown weeds and tree stumps didn't scream tactical advantage, but it bordered the main entrance into Harmony Hills, The entrance all 47 HOA households used to get in and out every single day. I named the LLC Gray Timber Holdings. Sounded boring, safe, a little bit corporate, a little bit mysterious. Within 2 months, Gray Timber Holdings owned 4 additional parcels, all strategically purchased at auction or through private sales. Turns out a couple of owners near the edge of the HOA had been delinquent on their property taxes for years, and the county was more than happy to offload the parcels. None of the HOA board members noticed. Karen certainly didn't. By the time they realized something was off, I had control over just every access point into the neighborhood. Not just the road that ran through my property. I now own 2 narrow connector lots along Willow Creek Drive and the only legal utility easement on the west side of the subdivision. I sat down with Tom, laid out the survey maps, and said, "So, how hard would it be to gate the entire perimeter?" He didn't blink. "Technically, not hard. Morally, you might be entering comic book villain territory. Just make it tight and legal," I replied. Karen wanted an HOA-run community? Let's see how she likes a toll booth. And so, the real fun began. In the span of 3 weeks, my hired crew, working under full permits courtesy of a separate commercial application from Gray Timber, installed 4 heavy-duty retractable gates at each access point into Harmony Hills. 2 had camera systems with facial recognition software. 1 had a license plate reader. The 4th, closest to the cul-de-sac near Karen's house, had a full-time security guard named Luis, who looked like he used to train professional linebackers for fun. Signs went up on every gate. Private road, access by permit only, operated by Gray Timber Holdings. Below that, in smaller text, monthly access permits, $100 per vehicle. Non-payment constitutes trespassing. The HOA residents woke up one Friday morning and found their world fenced in. Some thought it was a prank. Others assumed it was a utility installation. But then came the letters, official notices delivered door to door, informing every household that access to the roads now required a permit agreement with Gray Timber Holdings, and that refusal to comply would result in legal enforcement of trespassing laws. You could hear the collective aneurysm across the subdivision. Karen called me. Actually, she called Tom, who put her on speaker while I sat in his office with a coffee and a smug smile. "This is extortion," she shouted, voice cracking. "You're holding an entire neighborhood hostage." "It's private property," Tom said calmly, "all legally acquired with full title transfer and tax documentation. But these roads have been used by the community for years. That's de facto public access." "Incorrect," Tom replied, flipping pages of paperwork like he was turning the screws on a medieval rack. "There's no easement on file, no prescriptive right established under state law. If you had one, you'd have registered it. You didn't." "Nick, you can't do this," Karen snapped, switching targets. "You're punishing innocent families, children." "Then maybe you shouldn't have forged my signature and installed a gate to block me from using my own road," I replied. "This is just me leveling the field." There was silence on the line. Then a click. She'd hung up. By Monday, the HOA board had called an emergency meeting. It didn't go well. Several residents stood up, yelling over one another. One guy in a golf shirt pounded the table and demanded Karen fix this mess before my kids miss another day of school. Another woman cried about losing her rideshare job because her access was revoked. Karen tried to play the victim. "I was acting in the community's best interest," she insisted, her voice rising above the din. "I had no idea Mr. Brady would retaliate like this." But it wasn't working anymore. Even her loyal lapdogs were turning on her. Some demanded to see the original documents she submitted to the county. Others asked why she didn't tell them the road was privately owned from the start. A few suggested a vote of no confidence. It was delicious to watch. Back at my place, I set up an online portal where residents could apply for access permits. It was streamlined, efficient, and naturally included a hefty legal disclaimer. About 70% of the neighborhood caved within the first week. Most just wanted to get to work and pick their kids up from soccer practice, but a stubborn core refused, led by Karen, who began organizing carpool meetups outside the gates like some kind of resistance movement. One guy, a tech bro type in a Tesla, tried to bypass the barrier by hopping the curb and driving over a drainage ditch. His front bumper didn't survive the experience. I offered him a free month's access if he sent me the dash cam footage. He declined. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was just giving Karen and her people a taste of the nonsense they'd fed me for months. Except I didn't use forged documents. I used real money, real land, real law. And for the first time since this all started, I had the high ground, both literally and legally. They say money doesn't buy happiness, but I watched $73,000 in emergency asphalt work from the HOA fund vanish in a puff of bureaucratic smoke, and I'll be damned if that didn't bring a smile to my face. After the gates went up and the access fees kicked in, Karen lost what was left of her grip on reality, and more importantly, on the HOA board. The backlash was swift and loud. Angry residents flooded the community center during the next meeting demanding answers. People waved printouts of my property maps, photos of the new gates, and copies of the easement paperwork she had so proudly waved around just a few months ago. One man, a retired cop, flat out accused her of conduct bordering on criminal. He wasn't wrong. The tension finally exploded when a former board member, a quiet accountant named Daryl who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, stood up and cleared his throat. "I'd like to introduce something for the record," he said, placing a flash drive onto the table. The HOA secretary plugged it into the projector. Up came a PDF chain of emails, from Karen to a private land title consultant, then to a document services professional, then to a notary named Hank who had apparently signed off on the forged document that created the easement in the first place. There were dates, payment receipts, and on the cherry on top, a PDF attachment labeled Signature Template Nick B. The room turned silent. Karen's face went pale. "This is an invasion of privacy," she snapped, standing up. "This is an illegal leak of internal board communication." Daryl didn't even flinch. "You told the board the easement was real. You never told us you created it." Chaos erupted, yelling, accusations. A few people walked out swearing they'd never pay another HOA due again. The vote to remove Karen as president passed 28-2. But I wasn't celebrating yet. This was bigger than neighborhood drama now. Tom filed suit the next morning. Civil action, fraud, defamation, unlawful restriction of property access, damages to reputation and financial loss. We demanded a cool then $870,000 in total damages. The criminal charges came right after. Apparently, Karen had used her position to file at least 3 other questionable easement modifications on adjacent lots. County investigators, once mildly annoyed at my repeated visits, were now digging deep. She was charged with forgery, filing false documents, trespassing by proxy, and on attempted unlawful seizure of property. Real felony-level stuff. I still remember the morning it hit the local news. I was drinking coffee on the porch when my phone buzzed. HOA president faces fraud charges in land dispute scandal. Beneath the headline, a photo of Karen being led out of her home in a beige pantsuit flanked by 2 deputies. Her expression? Somewhere between, "How dare you," and "This isn't happening." It was happening. At the pretrial hearing, her attorney tried to spin it, claimed she acted on flawed information and sought only to preserve community standards. The judge didn't buy it, neither did the jury. The civil trial was a slow burn, long days of document reviews, testimonies, and courtroom drama. I sat through every minute. I watched neighbors take the stand and admit they'd blindly followed her lead. One even broke down in tears apologizing for vandalizing my driveway during the flyer wars. Then came the good part. My turn. Tom guided me through it like a maestro. We showed timelines, forged documents, security footage, even the surveillance video of Karen's hand-picked contractors installing the gate without permission, complete with timestamp overlays and drone footage. But the moment that stuck with everyone, when Tom asked me why I pursued the case even after the county voided the easement and gave me my road back. I looked straight at Karen. Because getting my road back wasn't enough. She tried to rewrite ownership, rewrite facts, and when I said no, she tried to cut me off from my own home. That's not just petty. That's dangerous. The jury deliberated less than a day. They awarded me the full amount, $870,000 plus legal costs. The judge called her actions calculated, malicious, and a gross violation of both legal boundaries and moral decency. But that wasn't the end. The criminal court was quicker. With the evidence in hand and 3 witnesses flipping under plea deals, Karen had no real defense left. The forged documents alone carried enough weight for a felony conviction. She was sentenced to 3 years in state prison, with no parole for the first 18 months. The day the sentence was read, I walked out of the courthouse with Tom, blinking into the flashbulbs of a dozen local news reporters. "Mr. Brady," one asked, shoving a mic in my face, "do you have anything to say to Karen Malloy tonight?" I paused, then grinned. "Yeah, tell her the gates lock both ways." There's a strange kind of quiet that settles over a neighborhood after a public scandal, like everyone's waiting for the other shoe to drop, even though the boots already hit the floor, crushed some bones, and walked out in handcuffs. Karen was gone, officially removed from her HOA post, convicted, serving time in a state facility where the shiplap was peeling and the only gated community involved correctional officers with tasers. The shock hadn't worn off for most people. For months, residents walked slower past my property. They waved more cautiously. Some left gift baskets, cookies, pies, even one homemade bottle of elderberry syrup I was too scared to try. But the real shift came during the emergency HOA restructuring. They held a vote on neutral ground, a church basement that smelled like mold and old hymn books. Tom and I were invited more for optics than for participation. The new interim board, made up of previously passive residents suddenly awakened by legal panic, stood awkwardly behind a folding table while everyone in attendance stared down at their own shoes. Eventually, someone spoke. "We'd like to propose negotiations," said a woman named Janet who wore cat-eye glasses and looked like she'd been reluctantly dragged into leadership. "About the road, the access fees." I leaned back in my seat and let the silence stretch just enough to remind them I didn't need this meeting. Then I nodded. "Let's talk." We worked out the terms over several meetings. Nothing fancy. Just a clear legal service agreement. Gray Timber Holdings would maintain all access roads and surrounding infrastructure, and residents could subscribe to a monthly access permit or opt out entirely and use alternate public routes, which didn't exist unless they planned to hike through poison ivy and drainage ditches. The price dropped slightly, $75 per month, with options for household bundles. Seniors got a discount. Emergency services got free entry. I even installed a fast response intercom system for first responders. The new board, having learned the hard way what happens when you screw with private ownership, signed the contracts with the urgency of people disarming a bomb. And something wild happened after that. peace. No more late-night vandalism, no more flyers, no more drive-by insults. The gates stayed up, but they were no longer a symbol of spite, just a feature of the neighborhood like the dog park or the overwatered community rose garden. The funds from the access permits added up fast, and I didn't just sit on it. We repaved the road with a fresh layer of blacktop so smooth it looked like oil on glass. I installed motion sensor streetlights along the bends, added reflective markers, and posted speed limit signs that actually worked, because now I could enforce them. I even hired Luis full-time, not just for security, but to help manage deliveries, maintenance, and resident assistance. The man had a knack for logistics and an intimidating stare that worked better than a stop sign. Then came the real surprise: collaboration. A few months in, Janet reached out and floated the idea of a joint project, a community garden on one of the formerly abandoned lots I'd acquired. "We know it's still your land," she said cautiously, "but maybe it could be a sign of reconciliation?" I said yes, not because I wanted their goodwill, but because after everything it actually felt good to build something instead of fencing it off. Before long, the HOA newsletter was featuring stories like, "Thanks to Nick for new LED lights," and "Gray Timber approves expansion of bike path." People stopped calling me a tyrant. Some even called me a landlord with a heart, which felt weird, but I took it. I still had a few holdouts who grumbled about Brady's little fiefdom, but they were in the minority, and none of them had the gall to try anything, not after what happened to Karen. Her name became a kind of cautionary whisper in board meetings. Anytime someone suggested cutting corners or rushing a vote, someone else would inevitably say, "Let's not pull a Karen." The phrase caught on like wildfire. By the end of the year, Harmony Hills wasn't the same HOA-controlled uniform suburb it used to be. It was a hybrid. Still tidy, still suburban, but with just enough edge. A mix of independence and structure. It wasn't what they planned, but it worked. And I was still up on my hill watching the gates close quietly each night, knowing they were on my land because I'd earned every inch of it. Exactly 1 year after Karen got herself marched out of her house in cuffs, I hosted a barbecue. Not just any barbecue, the first annual Gate Day celebration. The flyers had Luis's idea of humor all over them. Free food, no HOA meetings, and for 1 day only, the gates stay open. Below that, a cartoon drawing of a padlock with a smiley face and a tiny grill for a mouth. I didn't approve the design, but I let it ride. At this point, Harmony Hills had been through enough. A little cheesy fun felt earned. We set up tents in the old vacant lot by the bend, the same one I bought first back when I was still just trying to survive Karen's sabotage. Now it was a community space, complete with picnic tables, string lights, and a surprisingly competent jazz quartet made up of retired HOA dads trying to redeem themselves through saxophone. People showed up in droves. Some brought chairs, some brought food, others brought apologies. A lot of folks I hadn't spoken to face-to-face since the feud walked up with uncertain smiles and extended hands. "I didn't know what she was really doing," one woman said, holding a pie like an offering to a volcano. "No hard feelings," I replied, taking the pie and handing it to Luis without breaking eye contact. He sniffed it and nodded. Elderberry. Probably safe this time. Kids were running around in packs, fueled by lemonade and hot dogs. Retirees took turns admiring the new solar-powered lampposts. Even the Tesla guy, the one who'd tried to off-road his way into the neighborhood, made an appearance and handed me a bottle of scotch without a word. Just a nod. I accepted, also without a word. Then sometime around dusk I saw her, Karen. She was thinner, not in a tragic way. More like prison had peeled back the layers of superiority and left just a woman who had learned the hard way that power doesn't mean immunity. She wasn't wearing designer clothes, no clipboard. Just jeans, a plain top, and a face that carried more wrinkles than it had a year ago. I didn't approach her. She came to me. "Nick," she said, stopping a few feet away from my chair near the grill. I wasn't sure if I should come. I took a slow sip of beer. "Yet here you are." She gave a half smile. "I heard what you've done, about the lights, the garden, the contracts." "Didn't need forged documents this time," I said flatly. Her face didn't flinch. Credit where it's due. She looked me in the eye. "I deserved everything. The trial, the time. I was wrong." There was a pause between us, the kind of pause that stretches just long enough for 100 unspoken things to settle into silence. "I'm not asking for anything," she said finally. "Just wanted to say that." I gave a slow nod. "Well, you said it." She turned to go, then stopped. "You know," she added, "those gates, they really do make the neighborhood feel safer." "Funny," I said. "I never locked them to keep people out, just to remind them who owned the road." She gave a small laugh. Not bitter, not fake, just tired. "Take care of it then." She left without another word, disappearing into the crowd like a bad chapter finally closed. Later, as the stars came out and the lights flickered on above the lot, a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, tugged on my shirt. She had one of those painted butterfly masks on and cotton candy all over her hands. "Mr. Nick?" "Yeah, kiddo?" "Is it true you used to fight the whole neighborhood?" I chuckled. "Guess you could say that." "Did you win?" I leaned down, looking her dead in the eye. "Sweetheart, when people who don't own something try to take it from you and you make 'em pay rent just to walk on it, yeah, that's a win." She grinned, nodded like I'd just revealed the secrets of the universe, and ran off to chase glow sticks. I leaned back in my chair, the smoke from the grill curling into the cool night air. Behind me, the gates stood wide open for the first and only time that year. Tomorrow they'd close again, automatically, as always. And if anyone ever wondered who they were closing for, well, they'd only need to look up the hill past the streetlights and read the new sign we'd put up near the gate last week. "Welcome to Harmony Hills, a community of balance, boundaries, and better decisions." Underneath that, in smaller letters, just for me, "Private road, by invitation only."